It is Wednesday, May 24th. Welcome back to the GOAT District via the Player Profiler Network. Tonight, Director of Fantasy and Betting at the 33rd team and returning, defending, undisputed most appearances in the GOAT District. You know him, the Josh Larky, dropping his fierce fades, top targets. Should you be avoiding Anthony Richardson in your drafts? Is Garrett Wilson a one-way ticket to the moon? All this and so much more. High octane, high stakes, high win rate, goatness to get those ships. Guys, buckle up. We got a big one tonight. Let's get.
GOAT District, you know the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offer's the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden, they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice, from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man, y'all know what to do. It's the... And I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
What is up, Fantasyland? We're back in the district. We're back on the Player Profiler Network, as we do every Wednesday night, right here, 9 Eastern. And then we got another monster show tonight. We don't do it any other way. Josh, I think this is, we tried to figure it out, 8, 9, 48. I can't keep track anymore. You know
it's
what we're
been
at
a lot.
so far? Did you
I
go
don't
back
know
in
what
the
it's
history
at,
books?
Well, when you did that little teaser intro, I'm a really big Rocky fan, and it just made me want to be like the da 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 da. I'm ready. Let's do this.
That's the idea, man. We want to get the energy up. We've got a big guest. We've got a big topic. We got a big show, Dan, tonight. I know you're excited. We're going Dynasty. We're going redraft. We're going best ball. We're going to help you guys win all your leagues tonight. What up to the chat? We see Joe in there, Jordan, Mike. Appreciate you guys. Harry Snowman. I mean, you guys know Larky. He a lot of you know him from this very channel, actually, the Player Profiler, where he bloomed and started, and he's just rocketed up. Buddy, talk to us about your role at the 33rd team, Director of Fantasy and Betting. What you got going on there these days?
Yeah, so what I love about my role is that I get to do a little bit of everything. I feel like I'm easily bored, overly curious, and this is kind of a good way to feed all of that. It's a mix of social media, Twitter, stuff like that, a mix of business strategy, a mix of content calendar strategy, stuff like that, setting up the team for success with fantasy, betting, DFS. It's a mix of coding and research, which is kind of how I got my start with Matt Kelly at Player Profiler. So I don't do nearly as much coding and back-end research anymore day to day, but I still do it from time to time. A lot of writing, a lot of podcasting, and I think it just, it keeps me excited. And I'm very lucky that at Player Profiler, I could learn from Matt Kelly. And now at the 33rd, I feel like I've been blessed with two incredible mentor figures that are both very different in how they operate. And each of them kind of molded my style in a way.
Nice. So I love the variety in the job too. I mean, it's like burrito with everything right there.
And
yes.
the team, Josh, talk about the team. You guys are, similar to the GOAT District, man. You guys are stacked over there.
Yeah, I would like to plug Ryan Reynolds. He was recently promoted to Associate Director of Fantasy and Gambling. He's become my right-hand man, one of the best bettors out there that I know, one of the better fantasy players, a very good business mind on top of it. We have Jordan Vanek. I call him the wide receiver whisperer. The guy's done scout school. He learned how to code this offseason and took my course. So that film analytics blend. We have Ben Wolby doing all the data science back end for us. We have Ian Miller at Dynasty_IM on Twitter. Many of you have seen him. Ian and I did a show earlier today talking about some Dynasty running back rankings. We have Hilo, who I know is a friend of the show, kind of helping out everywhere, doing everything for us. So it's a very, very fun team that we have going on.
Yeah, I love it, man. I don't know, Dan, if you got to check it out, but I like the little rookie ranking you guys put together for the rookie drafts in Dynasty. I like the profile, the way you guys did the profiles, the comparisons, kind of showed a ceiling and a floor and kind of, a middle ground for expectations. Very well done. The team over there is crushing it. You guys are putting out some great content.
Thank you.
And we'll touch a bit more on, more specifics of what you've got out recently over there. One thing that's dropping Player Profiler, Dan, is the world famous draft kit. Our buddy Theo, who couldn't be with us tonight, but he's organizing that thing. He's putting that thing together. Obviously, with help from a lot of people in fantasy land, a lot of names that you guys know, including myself. I did J.K. Dobbins. Dan, I believe you did Lockett. Tyler Lockett.
Yep.
And Josh, you actually did a profile on one of my favorites.
Yeah, I did Jonathan Taylor. I felt bad. I totally spaced on it. I have a lot going on in my life. And this is how much of a maniac I am. I woke up in a cold sweat at like 3 a.m. and was like, holy crap, I haven't done my Jonathan Taylor profile. I tweeted at some random hour in the DMs to Theo, and I was like, I'm so sorry. You're getting this thing tomorrow. And then first thing that morning, I recorded a nice 4-minute video. Felt horrible. Gave it all I've got. So I would definitely recommend tuning in to see how I make the Miles Sanders 2022 parallel with Jonathan Taylor 2023. I think that's we'll actually discuss that a little bit on the show later on. So I think that's a good parallel. I think I'm probably biased, so we can talk about it later in the show and see what people think about that.
We will, for sure. Guys, use the code Theo. Theo wanted me to share that just to give you guys a little extra savings when you get yourself the draft kit, because you're not walking into draft season without that draft kit, and it's loaded this year. So make sure you check that out. We won't mention Andrew, who hasn't handed his in yet. We're not going to do that. But it's funny you mentioned that, Josh, because I told Theo today how same thing. That thing was kind of stressing me out. I got it done early just because it was too much, man. Middle of the night, middle of the afternoon, like, oh man, I got to put that thing together. So we're glad to hear that you're part of it. Dan, I know I heard rave reviews from what you put together for Theo and the package, the world famous draft kit. Guys, check it out and use the code Theo. So guys, we're 8 minutes in. We got to do some quick admin, some quick housekeeping. Make sure you guys pound that like button, guys. Subscribe, obviously, to the channel. Make sure you tune in to all the GOATness. Also, check us out on the GOAT District channel, YouTube channel. We drop a lot of other good content, high stakes, best ball. We do live drafts, redraft, Dynasty, you name it. We bring in some monster guests, so check that out. And of course, out there in the podcast land. Dan, before we get into the goodness, let's give a quick word here to our boss man.
People always ask me, hey, what is the World Series of fantasy or the Super Bowl of fantasy football? And it's easy. It's the FFPC, the Fantasy Football Players Championship. It's a $6 million prize pool. And they've had their Never Too Early Best Ball leagues cranking since February. So the FFPC is the answer to so many questions. Hey, where's the best place to get a Dynasty orphan? Well, you can adopt a Dynasty orphan at the FFPC. That's why we partner with them. If you want to play fantasy football for low, medium, high stakes, seasonal, best ball, Dynasty, go to the FFPC. And don't forget, promo code Underworld to get you $25 off your first team. $25 off your first team, no matter what team it is, no matter what format it is, at the FFPC. Go do it.
We do love the FFPC, guys. Go check it out, myffpc.com. We talk about it often. We do a bunch of live drafts on there. Like Harry Snowman said, smash the button. Guys, let's get into it. I don't know about you guys, but Rodgers made it again as the main topic of the offseason. He does it. He's done it for 2 or 3 seasons now, maybe even more. And we're hearing a lot, Josh, about Aaron Rodgers, the Jets, how much better they're going. Today it was like, it's them and the Chiefs, like those are basically the 2 teams now is what I'm hearing. So obviously Garrett Wilson showing us a lot last year, smoking hot commodity in seasonal drafts right now. Do you think the hype is worth the squeeze with JW right now? And how high is too high for his ADP?
You know, I got someone that commented on Twitter recently because I said one of my ideal fantasy drafts would be Wilson in the second round. And they're like, he has never done it. How could you take him over guys that have done it? And I thought that was pretty funny because he wanted elite fantasy production. And I said, okay, well, he averaged 17 fantasy points a game in the 8 games he didn't play with Zach Wilson, one of the worst quarterbacks in NFL history. But if you want some season-long stats, fine. The guy had over 1,100 yards as a rookie with 3 different and bad quarterbacks. He is going from a quarterback carousel of Joe Flacco, then Zach Wilson, then Mike White, to Aaron Rodgers. And he's playing in year 2. These players generally get better from rookie year to year 2. Wilson was so good, we forgot about Elijah Moore. And if anyone out there likes to bet, I recently took Garrett Wilson at 25-1 on DraftKings to lead the NFL in receiving yards. His average depth of target's pretty good. He's heavily targeted. He has the same odds as Amon-Ra St. Brown. Are you kidding me? One of these guys has an ADOT that is twice that of the other guy. Do we really think Amon-Ra is going to have more receiving yards than Garrett Wilson this upcoming season? I certainly do not. And in terms of fantasy football, Amon-Ra goes at a similar place. Jonathan Taylor goes at a similar place. I'd take Garrett Wilson over both of them in the early second round of fantasy drafts, though you can usually get him in the mid-second round.
Yeah, Dan, he's going between 2-1 and 2-8 right now in the Fantasy Pros, the 350 buy-in on the FFPC. I know I've been aggressively trying to get him. I made a big move in a Superflex Dino. And I mean, what do you think of the receiver in New York? Is he number 1 receiver material? You think Larky is like Larky says? Do you think that's his ceiling?
Yeah, I do. What we saw last year was definitely eye opening, and I would rather bet on a player like that on the come than try to hang on too long with some other players. Like Stephon Diggs is somebody that I would. As I'm sitting here thinking, how high up would I be willing to let Wilson rise? I think I might be willing to let him rise over Stephon Diggs, though I do have Diggs lower than most people, so I have him kind of right at the turn, first and second round turn. But I think Garrett Wilson's got the whole package, and I think if Aaron Rodgers can even deliver like Peyton Manning's last season, even if that's all he's got in the tank, he's probably going to be better for Wilson than what he had at quarterback last year.
I have so many early offseason Garrett Wilson Rodgers stacks. Just as soon as I started hearing, seeing the smoke, usually there's fire, and I was just especially the tournaments, like stacking those two was one of my priorities. So I'm feeling good about that. Let's look at the other side, Dan. I'll go to you first, just because this is a guy that maybe you weren't as high on coming into the season, and let's face it, a lot of people weren't. When we talk about Christian Watson and the Packers side of the deal, the Aaron Rodgers deal. So Christian Watson finished wide receiver 35 in fantasy points per game last year, top 12 in ADOT and yards per route, showed efficiency basically across the board, fantasy points per target, per route run, especially versus man contested. And of course he finished with 9 touchdowns, which, maybe we see a bit of regression there. But on one hand, you've got Jordan Love coming in, taking over at quarterback, so a big question mark there. And then you've got this second-year receiver, showed a lot in his first year, a lot of promise. Dan, how do you feel? I'll go to you first on Christian Watson going into 2023.
Yeah, so Watson definitely showed off a lot of alpha tendencies, and he showed what we want to see. Took him a while to get going, but that's fine. That's often the case with rookie wide receivers. And really it comes down to how good is Jordan Love? Because if I think Love will feed him, it's just how effective are those targets going to be, because that has a lot to do with the quarterback. But I really like Watson. I think he's a solid value where he generally goes in the 5th round for the most part. And, at that point, it's like you're talking Christian Watson or DJ Moore. And DJ Moore maybe a little bit safer, but Watson probably has a little bit more upside in that offense, because if Jordan Love can put it together, we could see a pretty good season out of him. I don't think it's going to be quite the same as if Rodgers was there. I mean, if Rodgers was there this year, the sky would have been the limit, I think. But I'm still making sure I draft enough Christian Watson to be slightly over even weight on him.
Josh, you know what, Josh, I'll get your take first, and then we'll do a quick OTC with this guy. Just looking at the drafts right now, how do you feel about Watson, and what other pieces do you like in the passing game out there in Green Bay with Jordan Love taking over?
So I was quite in on Christian Watson pre-draft. I'm actually still figuring it out. I liked Dan's explanation because I haven't been able to figure it out. Simply since pre-draft, I was like, there's nobody there. The guy runs deep down the field, and Jordan Love's probably going to feed him. But then we see the draft, and what do we know about these quarterbacks that are just not as good at football? They often like their short to intermediate targets. It's a little bit safer for them. They don't have to throw the ball as deep, contested situations. They get Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed, I think my comp for him would be Deontay Johnson light, where just not quite as good Deontay Johnson. Obviously, as a prospect, he was better than Deontay Johnson. But now that we know what Deontay Johnson is in the NFL, I think getting some chunk of him would be a success for Reed. That's kind of how I view him. Close to the line of scrimmage, wins, dangerous after the catch, smaller frame. And then they take 2 rookie tight ends in the 2nd and 3rd round, both of whom are almost exclusively pass catchers rather than blockers. And now suddenly I'm like, all right, so we've got 3 young, pretty talented players that are going to be close to the line of scrimmage. I'm still figuring out how I'm going to ultimately come out with Watson. I was very in on him pre-draft. Now I'd say I'm kind of in the middle. So Dan was quite helpful there in terms of thinking through it. So we're buffering. We'll say that.
I like that, buffering. That's a good way of putting it. And I think a lot of fantasy land is buffering right now with that offense. Mm-hmm. Another offense where there's a bit of blur, a bit of buffering. And actually, you and Ryan Reynolds, talking about your buddy Ryan Reynolds over there at the 33rd team, are very high on this offense for 2023. I'm talking about the Miami Dolphins. You've got Tua. When this guy's healthy, this offense is virtually unstoppable. We saw it last year in the district. We love Tyreek. We love Waddle. Of course, we love A-Chain, that shiny new toy out there in that offense. But I have slight hesitation with Tua just because of the concussion history. I know, maybe that's not the right approach, but I'm not necessarily all in. Like I said, you and Ryan are pretty bullish. How bullish are you guys on this offense? And do you still have concerns? Like, is your foot fully on the gas pedal, or do you hold back a bit, knowing that there is a potential risk when you look at the quarterback's health history?
Is there a risk with his health history? Absolutely. Dynasty, I think that's a real concern. Redraft, I generally don't worry too much about the injuries. I remember when we couldn't draft Brandon Cooks because Brandon Cooks had so many concussions. And 3 years ago, his career was going to end. And then he had 2 more really, really good fantasy seasons. Last year was a disappointment. There might be the rebound in Dallas. We'll have to see. But essentially, Brandon Cooks was done in his mid-20s. I remember you guys, I see Dan nodding his head like, there was real talk. Like, is this guy going to retire? What's going to happen? I kind of see that with Tua. I truly have no idea what's going on there. I'm not a doctor. Obviously, it's serious. Do I know how to predict how often he's going to get concussed in the future? No. Dynasty, scary. Redraft, I'm not worried. Tua averaged 8.9 yards per pass attempt last year. Nearly a full yard per pass attempt. Higher than second place Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devin A-Chain. We're giving Tua 3 guys that run a sub 4.4 40-yard dash. If we're really concerned about health, well, then we probably shouldn't draft Lamar Jackson and Justin Fields in round 3 or 4 because they run a lot. They take a lot of hits. They both missed time due to injuries last season. Lamar, in fact, misses time due to injuries almost every single year, aside from his 2019 campaign. So the way I see it, let's say that we knew Tua was fully healthy for every game. How does he not go right alongside Justin Herbert and Trevor Lawrence in fantasy drafts? You're essentially getting a several round concussion discount. And Dynasty, oh yeah, of course, makes sense. Whew. I do not want to bet on Tua Tagovailoa long term, but for a single 1 year small sample size, I will bet on Tua and this offense.
Dan, this is why I love having these guys on our show, having specifically Josh, because he'll always, there's a good chance he's going to change my mind on at least one guy. And this is my next sound effect, touche, especially with the Lamar Jackson. When you talk about Lamar Jackson, I'm one of those guys. I'm so bullish on Lamar Jackson, yet I've got that hesitation. Dan, where are you on this offense? I know you're a big A-chain guy. You and I have made moves for Hill in Dynasty. How do you feel about this offense? Do you have concerns, or did Josh just kind of, give you a bit of comfort?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you take a look at the ADPs of just Tyreek and Waddle alone, and then look at, what share of the offense they've had, and then you look at Tua's ADP, and you go, this just doesn't match up here. It doesn't make sense. So if you're drafting Tyreek that high, if you're drafting Waddle that high, then you probably ought to be drafting Tua anytime you can get him with a nice discount that we're getting on him right now. So I'm pretty comfortable with where Tua is going right now. I'm comfortable with where Tyreek and Waddle are going, and A-Chain I think is a ridiculous value. I mean, just to kind of talk about it a little bit, Josh, what do you think between A-Chain, who's going in basically like the 9th round, or Jahmyr Gibbs, who's going in basically the 4th round? Who's the better value to you?
Well, I think A-Chain's definitely the better value. So I was leading the charge on Gibbs pre-draft. He was going like the 6th round, and I was like, guys, he's probably going to go to a team that wants to use him a lot, and he's going to go in probably the 1st round of the NFL draft. What are we doing here? This is not a 6th round pick. Then suddenly jumps up 3rd, 4th round, and I go, all right, guys, like, let's calm down a little bit. He's still 199 pounds. How do he and A-Chain go so far apart? I understand draft capital for Dynasty, but for redraft, I'm like, one of these guys plays with Money Montgomery, who has 11 million guaranteed and is the better version of Jamal Williams. And then the other one plays with Raheem Mostert, who is 31, 32 years old, and Jeff Wilson, who until like a year and a half ago was the Niners 4th/5th string running back. Come on. We should be taking A-Chain a lot earlier than he goes. I understand the size concerns, but at the same time, his team took him in the 3rd round. They have an empty running back depth chart. And if there is any team I feel confident can know how to use his speed, it's the team that got a lot of RB1 caliber weeks out of both Mostert and Jeff Wilson last season.
Yeah, it's ridiculous how much they got out of those two guys. And A-Chain, he's not big. There's no doubt about that. And I've been hammering all offseason, guys, size matters. It really does when it comes to running back. But on the other hand, we're not asking him to do a ton of touches. What we're asking him to do is be efficient with those touches. And he's in the exact right offense to be efficient with those touches. And he is actually pretty good at running between the tackles, better I think than Gibbs. And so as you pointed out with Montgomery, there's a sizable roadblock for Gibbs right there. I wouldn't expect Gibbs to get 200 carries ever in his career probably. If he gets even 150 this year, that would be a surprise to me. So I would rather Gibbs if he was going a little bit later, but given where he's going, give me A-Chain all day long. What do you think, JD?
All right, guys, let's do this before we move out of the receiver position here, because we hit some pretty tasty ones. Let's do some quick OTC. We love doing some OTC here on the show. We'll do a rapid fire. Let's start actually right where we started, guys. Garrett Wilson or Devontae Adams, Josh?
Oof. If I'm only in one draft, I would take Garrett Wilson.
Dan?
That's a tough one. I don't love Devontae Adams' situation, but man, oh man, he is going to be that offense. So Devontae Adams by a whisker, but it's very, very close.
Yeah, you can flip a coin between. What about Garrett Wilson and Waddle? We talk about the Miami offense. Dan, I'll go to you first.
I'm going to go Garrett Wilson there. Waddle, until something happens to Tyreek, the offense really does flow through Tyreek. And Waddle can take advantage. He's kind of the Devonta Smith to Tyreek Hill, the way Devonta Smith is to AJ Brown. He's going to have some big weeks. He's going to be worth drafting. He's going to have strong performance, but Tyreek is definitely the one who's stirring the drink there. So I'm going Garrett, who's definitely the alpha in New York.
Josh, Dan's not familiar with rapid fire. What are you
No,
doing?
I'm not. Sorry.
I prefer Garrett Wilson, but I'll quickly say that I'm higher on Waddle than most. Rookie year, Waddle was basically Amon-Ra St. Brown, rookie receptions record, low depth of target. Year 2, he suddenly turns into Deshaun, like prime Deshaun Jackson. Fewer targets, way more yards and touchdowns. And seeing Waddle succeed in 2 different roles gives me hope that the floor is incredibly high on top of whatever like the injury contingent ceiling is if anything happens to Tyreek, who's now 29.
Thanks, Bradley.
Shout out to Bradley. I love it. I love it. Shout out to the chat, man. You guys are awesome tonight. Talking about Tua and he maybe gain some weight. Don't you guys hear? He's a black belt now, man. He's got to put on some muscle. He's going straight to the octagon after this thing for sure, right, guys? So let's do one more. Christian Watson, or Jerry Jeudy, Josh?
I'd take Jerry Jeudy.
Dan?
The guy was pretty much automatic for receiving yards last year. You can look at his game logs. He plays more than like 3 snaps, and he's giving you 60, 70 plus receiving yards. I'm confident year 2 with Russell Wilson plus Sean Payton. They get it figured out.
My buddy Sean. Dan?
Yeah, Judy. Same reasons as Josh.
Okay.
Was that quick enough for you, Brad?
That was beautiful. That was beautiful. All right, let's go to one of my favorites, Anthony Richardson, polarizing player in redraft right now. Obviously, his rushing prowess, will give him the nice floor. What's his expected, or realistic, I guess I should say, Josh, ceiling for you? I'm a big Colts fan. I love that my boys got him. But rookie running backs, you're hearing now in camp that he's ahead of the game, but that's also that, May, June talk that we're used to.
Yeah, it would be pretty hard to imagine the coach saying, wow, we really messed up on this pick 3 weeks post-draft. So, I have yet to hear that coach speak. On a serious note, Dynasty, I love Richardson. He's my 102 behind Bijan, and I think they're actually quite close. Redraft, I put out an article. It's free on the 3013.com. I talk about why I am very gravely concerned with Anthony Richardson in redraft because of his ADP. He often goes at quarterback 10 in redraft. Now, I did a study. Like I said, I still do a little coding from time to time. The past 15 years, there have been a lot of rookie quarterbacks. Only 4 of them put up at least 18 fantasy points per game as a rookie. 4 in 15 years. Basically, 1 every 4 years. You want to know what 18 fantasy points gives you? That would have been the QB 13 last year in fantasy points per game. Remember, Richardson going QB 10. This was a QB 13 benchmark that 4 guys have hit in 15 years. Essentially, those 4 guys were Deshaun Watson, 7-game sample. Cam Newton, NFL record for rushing touchdowns by a quarterback, plus throwing for over 4,000 yards. Newton led Auburn to a national title with nothing at receiver. You can look at who his receivers were. I don't recognize a single name. None of them did anything. They were terrible. Robert Griffin III, a multi-year starter in college. His efficiency was elite. And he had a 20-5 touchdown to interception ratio as a rookie. And then Justin Herbert, who had 290 passing yards a game. All these guys had several times as many pass attempts in college as Richardson, several times as many passing touchdowns, and Watson, Newton, RG3, way better rushing stats. Everyone tells me the scheme at Florida sucked. I honestly can only care to a certain extent. Anthony Richardson had 100 carries and 650 rushing yards last year. The actually very good mobile quarterbacks in college average well over 1,000 rushing yards. I don't know what happened. I have not watched every single snap of Richardson, so I'll give the film grinders that. But you have to explain to me why he has half the rushing yards that he should have, why he threw only 24 career touchdowns in college. At a certain point, I'm like, yeah, I love this guy, Dynasty, the most athletic quarterback ever. For this season, people are like, Shane Steichen. Okay. So Jalen Hurts did not do it as a rookie. He was not ready. It actually took him till year 3 to put up awesome fantasy points. Justin Fields wasn't even great until year 2. Everyone keeps giving me these examples of players, and I'm like, okay, that wasn't a rookie quarterback. And check his game logs from college, because he had a lot more of them than Richardson. I don't know what the heck we're doing. We're basically taking Richardson and assuming that he's in his second or third year in the NFL with his redraft ADP. I simply cannot get on board.
Yeah, it's tough. Dan, especially in redraft, like I'm big in Dynasty, but I feel like it's hard for me to click the button and build around Anthony Richardson. For me, like the pieces around him would really have to step up.
Yeah, everybody's looking too hard for that Konami code quarterback. And, so the problem is we've been kind of conditioned that, there's always going to be somebody who comes through, that we don't expect. And everybody's looking at Anthony Richardson and they're saying, well, he's that guy. Same thing they were saying about Trey Lance last year. And there's obviously we hope Richardson doesn't get hurt like Lance, but there's a lot of things that can happen. And, we want our quarterbacks to be good passers. And as Josh pointed out, most of the time these rookie quarterbacks, even if they're good running quarterbacks, they take a while to develop as a passer. The problem is we're looking at almost more like a Davis Mills as a passer as far as his passing talent rather than Derek Carr or Kirk Cousins or something like that.
You're killing me here, Dan. As a Colts fan, I mean, come on. Davis
Sorry.
Mills.
I don't see a great first year. I mean, hopefully it's a learning experience for him.
Yeah,
hopefully he gets better as he goes along, but I don't know. I mean, I think people have pushed him up too high.
You got to manage expectations.
JD, as a Colts fan, this should be music to your ears. We love his long-term outlook. We hate his short-term outlook. What do the Colts need? I mean, if they have a bad season, how amazing would it be if you guys have an early pick next year, take a premium offensive lineman 100%. For Richardson? This is not the Colts' year. I think next year they could be very well set up if they are bad this year, but Richardson gets all the experience.
Yeah, I wrote the Peyton Manning from draft year all the way. Year one was ugly, man. Like let AR throw those interceptions, man. Let him make the mistakes. It's fine, man. We're looking for ceiling in
26 touchdowns, 26 interceptions, I think it was.
And guys, let's just remember Ryan, Rivers, Wentz. That's all I got to say, man. If you're a Colts fan out there, be patient. Let this man bloom. It's going to be a fun ride. Dan, we talked about A-Chain. Actually, you already asked that. So I'm going to go to the next one. And I'll go to Josh first. Rashad White, J.K. Dobbins, and Cam Akers, they're all 24 years old. What order would you rank these three in Dynasty? And where do you rank them in redraft? How close are they in your rankings?
So I'm trying to pioneer this new thing with running backs where unless you're an elite Dynasty asset, it's almost entirely a 1 year window.
Yes.
Injuries. I mean,
perfect.
At a certain point, I'm like, how the heck are we using the same window for running backs, receivers, quarterbacks? I'm like, these guys have wildly different lifespans in the NFL. So the way that I see it, Dynasty and Redraft, I have them the same. I lead off with J.K. Dobbins. Good offensive line. Lamar Jackson keeps him efficient. He's got elite speed. So even though the pass game role is probably never going to be there, he has that breakaway run ability. We've seen it with Nick Chubb where you can have high-end fantasy success without catching passes. Next, I'll go with Cam Akers. Akers has the bad offensive line. That's really what hurts him. We saw him come on strong late last season. He's shown that he can handle a big workload. He actually got some decent pass game usage towards the end of last season. And I think he was someone that like pre-Achilles, most of us loved him. We were like, oh yeah, that's a pretty elite Dynasty asset. So I think at this point, it looks like he's finally getting back on track with the injury stuff. It's just like, God, the situation sucks. Terrible offensive line. And Stafford just does not like to check the ball down to running backs. I think he's the only non-mobile quarterback I've ever seen that refuses to check the ball down. He's like about to get sacked, and I think that's why he has so many injuries. He's about to get hit, and he's like, rather than check the ball down, I'm going to throw this one deep. And then last, that means we have Rashad White. I was quite intrigued by him coming out of college. Anytime you have a big, fast runner who also catches passes, that's quite exciting. But he would just, oh God, this guy was not good as a rookie. Tampa Bay, I mean, the Buccaneers fans have to be one of the most delusional fan bases right now. You had the second lowest scoring offense in the entire NFL last year. You're not going from Tom Brady to Baker Mayfield. Where are these Rashad White touchdowns? Where are these Rashad White receptions going to come from again? Rashad White had a great amount of receptions as a rookie. because of Tom Brady. Leonard Fournette had way more receptions. I don't care about the singular number of receptions because he's going to be playing with Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask with no touchdowns. We hope he stays healthy. I just, at this point, don't quite understand the Rachaad White love because Tom Brady is not his quarterback.
Dan, I mean, they all have question marks. We like all three. I know, like, if I'm looking at my rankings, they're all super close. I love J.K. Dobbins, as you guys know, so I'm going to put him first. Rachaad White, the problem is, out of the three, he's the guy we haven't really seen it yet. And it's not like he's, like Josh said, he's not going in the greatest situation. Maybe they lean more on the running game because they don't have Brady there. How do you feel about these running backs, Dan?
Yeah, so I've got J.K. Dobbins definitely in front of the other two. I think he's got by far the best situation. He's got the good offensive line. He's got, Lamar Jackson, who's going to help open up running lanes for him. He's not going to get the receptions that White does, though I think in this new offense he might get more receptions potentially than what we have seen in the past. So, and he's a year removed from that injury too. That injury really hobbled him most of the way through last year. But at the end of the year, you could see that, that elite speed, that breakaway gear coming back. Cam Akers is definitely next for me. And again, same thing. Kind of a rough year with injury, kind of a rough year with Sean McVay. I mean, there was you could basically write an entire miniseries out of their relationship last year. But it ended up that they got into a good spot with each other. Akers started getting the use. He started it looked like starting to get a little bit of his speed and everything back. So I think Akers is going to be real good this year. And Rachaad White, for the exact reasons Josh mentioned, I don't see it. Maybe he can get enough receptions, but I just don't think he's that great of a runner between the tackles. I don't see them scoring a lot of touchdowns. I think Rachaad White is a lot of hope and not a lot of, it's more sizzle than steak, basically.
Yeah, but for me, the biggest takeaway in this segment is what Dan said or what Josh said. I've said this a few times in the last couple shows, even, Dan, talking about our approach with different positions. I've been playing running back as a one-year project for a while now, and it pays off. You don't get stuck holding the last time I got stuck holding the bag, I guess you could say, in one of the GOAT leagues was with Gurley. And that's like a huge regret at that time, So you got to play these, especially the running back position, per year. You can go 3 years, 2-3 years with other positions for sure, tight end even longer. But running back, man, it's such a short. We see it. One day you're on top of the hill, and the next day you're barely. Look at the guys that are on free agency right now, right, with Zeke and Fournette. Let's go to another backfield before we get into some of Josh's work. Ken Walker is going right now in round 4 or 5 turn. Dan, you pointed out actually in the BBM 4. We actually just did one of those, I believe, on Friday. Well, Zach Charbs, I like to call him Charbonnet, he's going around the 9th round. How are you reading this backfield in Seattle, Josh? And do you prefer one of these guys over the other?
So first off, I think both are palatable at ADP. Kenneth Walker is the incumbent. I understand his rushing efficiency was questionable at times, but still, it's the type of guy we like in fantasy. He's got the draft capital, home run hitter with great speed. He should get a good amount of carries. Here's why I also like Charbonnet and why I prefer Charbonnet at his ADP. Charbonnet is a better pass catcher. So I think if either of them is going to be catching passes, it's Charbonnet. And one thing that Charbonnet was pretty good at is not having negative yardage type plays in college. And that seems to be like you dig into everything and you're like, why did the team not love Ken Walker? What the heck is Charbonnet doing? Well, Ken Walker's kind of like Saquon Barkley. Very, very fun, but there are some bad decisions, some bad runs mixed in with the great home run hitting. And I think there's a chance that they start to lean more on Charbonnet potentially. Do I love Ken Walker in a vacuum on a day when Charbonnet is active and healthy? No, I think he's good, not great. Okay, well, then let's play the injury game. Do we love Walker if Charbonnet goes down? Yes. But do we love Charbonnet if Walker goes down? Yes. Pretty massive ADP discrepancy. In a vacuum, if they had the same ADP, of course we go with the incumbent. But when one guy goes much later with the same draft capital, and he catches passes. And we know that he was drafted for a reason, which is that they clearly didn't want Ken Walker to be getting every single touch. I'll just take him 4 to 5 rounds later if I have one draft and I can choose one of them.
Is it that simple, Dan, the cheaper guy?
It is for me, really. Walker is just starting to get to the level that's palatable for me to think about drafting him. But honestly, where he's going, I still like so many wide receivers better. It's been very hard for me to push the button on Walker. It's probably I don't think I've pushed the button on Walker since the draft, as a matter of fact. Charbonnet, much easier to push that button on because, he is so much cheaper. This is going to be a split backfield. I don't know if they're going to be doing a hot hand or what, whether it's going to be a more traditional split or whatever. But, Charbonnet is the guy who's got the upside because if anything does happen to Walker, I think Walker almost needs something to happen to Charbonnet to really pay off. Otherwise, the best you're hoping is to kind of eke out about what you paid for him.
Yeah, I think you take the cheaper guy, and I'm like you, Dan. I'm just waiting for Walker to fall into the 6, start falling a bit more, with that.
Yeah,
let's see a couple sharp squats.
I can get behind it.
Yeah, let's see some Geno to Sharps or see him do some squats in the sun or something, or in the rain, I guess you should say, in Seattle. Guys, remember to smash the like, the subscribe. Check us out on the GOAT District channel. We're here on the Player Profiler Network every Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. We appreciate the support. Drop your comments in the comments, I guess you could say, or drop your your questions in the comments. We'll get to it. Join us live. As you guys see, we'll drop some questions or we'll answer some questions. And actually, I saw one before we get into the next segment here. We had a nice little trade question that I saw. So in a league where you can only start 2 RB but 3 to 5 wide receiver, how do you feel about trading Bijan for Garrett Wilson and a first, Dan?
Yeah, I'd take Garrett Wilson in the first.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Yes.
Right? Easy.
Yep.
All right. Smash. Like our buddy Joe Carlton said, smash, accept. Yes. All right. So let's get into some of Josh's goodness. You're putting up some awesome work over there at the 33rd team. You just put up a massive new set of best ball rankings on your site. Tell us a bit about your process, not just on the rankings, but also looking at player exposure, recommended player exposure, because we love talking about that in the district.
So I think one thing that's important in this industry is doing stuff a little bit differently than everyone else. There's a lot of saturation out there. I'm sure everyone that's listening to this as a consumer has seen the influx of waiver wire stuff that you see on a Tuesday. Twitter, Instagram, pretty much wherever you are, maybe even your phone's getting notifications from like Yahoo or ESPN Fantasy, FFPC. Someone's giving you a notification that there's waiver wire stuff. I kind of think that rankings for something like best ball, it's kind of getting saturated. Ryan Reynolds actually had this great idea, and he was like, hey, we spend so much time making these rankings. What if instead of making our rankings, we just look at the current ADP rankings and then discuss how we like those players at that ADP? Why would we have our own set of rankings when we can essentially do the same exact thing in terms of actionable for the people? So what we did is we created a ranking system or a rating system, 1 to 5, where a 3 is average exposure. And we basically say, hey, this player's fine. Let's get about 8% exposure. 1 in every 12 drafts, we want to take him. A 3.5, it's like, oh yeah, let's try and get 10, 11% exposure. Let's get a little more than average. A 2.5 would be a little less than average, and so on and so forth, up to a 5, which is like, hey, 8% is average. Give me 20% or more of this player. I love this guy. I can't stop taking him. Where a 1 is like, you know what? This guy's got to fall at least a round of ADP. Then I will take him, simply not so I don't have 0 of him, but never will I be caught reaching or taking him at his ADP. So we put out that rating system for the top 270 players for Underdog. The plan is to do that for DraftKings Best Ball and for FFPC Best Ball as well, because it takes a lot less time than doing the full rankings process. Yet I think if anything, it's as if not more helpful. So that's been a new wrinkle for us this year that so far we've gotten pretty good feedback, but people on the show, hit me with the angry comments if you think that sounds like the worst idea ever. So no, you cannot import our rankings into Underdog. I'm sorry. I don't really know anyone that's had success blindly importing rankings anyway, though. So hopefully that, along with the dozens and dozens of players that we wrote up in those free rankings on the 33team.com, hopefully that can help people draft some pretty good best ball teams.
Dan, I love this. I often talk about where I am on players ownership wise. It's not because I think people care about my team specifically. I even tweet out like, these are my most owned players at this position at FFPC or Underdog, because to me, that says more than me just going on a show and saying, I like this guy, reading off his stats. If I'm investing in him as a high stakes player, you know what I mean? That to me holds more weight. I don't know how you feel about that, Dan. I know we often talk about players and how, what kind of ownership, how much we're willing to invest in these guys.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is kind of how I think when I'm doing best ball or when I'm doing redraft, and I'm building a portfolio is, it doesn't matter to me how high would you take him unless a player starts moving that high. It's more matters where is he at right now. And so, where he's at right now, then how much do I want of him? How much better do I like him than the other players who are going in the same range? Because it's all about choices. I mean, if you're taking Nick Chubb, you're probably not going to get Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen. It's just not going to happen. So you're deciding, well, how much Chubb do I want versus how much Hurts versus how much Josh Allen? So it totally makes sense to me because it kind of helps me see how Josh is thinking about it in his brain. And I can go, yeah, I really like that, or maybe I disagree with that. But it makes me think in a different way.
I want to make sure we hit the last two questions we have for Josh, just about a couple other great topics that he's hit on recently. So let's do like a kind of a rapid fire, but just get your take. We'll go to Josh first, and then I'll go to Dan. Let's start with Josh Allen. Where are you with regards to exposure on a quarterback that's going, top 2-3 rounds right now?
Have him at a 2.5. Essentially, Jalen Hurts is my QB1. And Hurts runs more and has a much better supporting cast than Josh Allen. So I just don't quite see it this year with Allen.
I am exactly right where Josh is. I totally nailed it.
I will admit to sneaking in some Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen stacks every once in a while in these tournaments. Guilty as charged, but yeah, not someone I'm highly invested in.
That's kind of what I said. Was like, and I think I did a write-up for him, and it was basically like, you take Diggs in the first round, don't bet against yourself, just take Allen. Yeah. But if you're not taking Diggs, like you really have no excuse to have a naked Josh Allen through 2 rounds.
Yes. Especially if you're doing it just to piss off the guy that's next who took that just, I'm always like, yeah, that's not a good approach. So let's talk about Jonathan Taylor real quick. We talked about him earlier. Where are you on him, on JT?
Had him at a 2. Pretty well below the field on him. The parallel I made for the draft guide for Player Profiler was Miles Sanders from last year. Miles Sanders from last year was ultra efficient on the ground, almost 1,300 rushing yards, 5 yards a carry, 11 touchdowns, 15 carries a game, stayed healthy all year. Miles Sanders was the RB 16.5 PPR points per game. Oof. I mean, turns out rushing yards just do not score the fantasy points we want. Anthony Richardson does not strike me as the quarterback that's going to pepper the already not great target share Jonathan Taylor. And I encourage people to do the math. Try and create a stat line for Jonathan Taylor where he's awesome in fantasy football. It's very, very hard to do in that offense. Yeah,
I would agree with that. I think I'm going to be underweight on him when all is said and done. Because I see him as a guy who's really got a solid floor every week, but the ceiling is just going to be, he's going to have a tough time getting those monster weeks that you really want out of those early picks. So, he's a guy I'd love to see in the 3rd round, but it'll never happen.
You should go where Nick Chubb goes, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, if he pushes down, he's definitely going to be some nice value, I think, as he gets to the back end of the 2nd into the 3rd. I'll do one more on your list here, just because this is one of Dan's favorite guys. As we said, he actually did the profile for the world famous draft kit. Tyler Lockett, where are you on him, Josh Larky, with regards to ownership?
I put him at a 3.5, a little bit above the field. Essentially, he and Jackson Smith and Jigba just don't really play the same role. Everyone's like, all right, JSN and Metcalf look nothing alike. I agree. And then they're like, well, that means he must look like Lockett. I'm like, well, no, he doesn't. Lockett's going to play on the outsides. Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to play in the slot. Lockett's going to have a much higher depth of target. So even if he's out targeted by JSN, he can still get there in fantasy. I just don't quite understand how people love to assign like binary buckets to receivers. They're like, same role, different role. Same like Quentin Johnston. I was like, guys, just I don't love Mike Williams in fantasy football. It is not really because of Quentin Johnston. I'm like, these guys do not play the same role. One of them is a super far downfield clasher. The other is a moderately downfield, dangerous after the catch guy. Think CeeDee Lamb, who plays outside. Like, these guys don't play the same role. Just because he doesn't look like Keenan Allen doesn't mean now he like legally has to play the Mike Williams role. I'm like, there can be 3 receivers in an offense with different roles. Like, we've seen it with the Bengals for multiple seasons now. So do I think Lockett is helped by JSN? No. But hey, the guy goes 6th, 7th, 8th round in fantasy drafts. All he's done is be awesome and efficient and stay healthy year after year. I'm going to keep pushing the draft button, just like Dan on Tyler Lockett.
Nice. Dan, we know you like Lockett. Anything to add?
Yeah, just the incredible efficiency, and also just the fact that, if you parse Pete Carroll's comments, he's talking about JSN, that they took him because they want to maximize their efficiency when they are running 11 personnel. But the thing is, Seattle does not run that much 11 personnel. They run a lot of 12 personnel. And so, I just don't see that JSN is going to be digging into Lockett that much, because I think it's going to be Lockett and Metcalf anytime they're running 12 personnel, or most times they're running 12 personnel. So I don't think a whole lot is going to change for Lockett. I mean, yeah, for sure JSN takes a little bit off the top, but Lockett is so cheap right now that you can still keep smashing the draft button on him.
All right, Josh, bit of a time crunch, but like I said, I want to make sure that peeps know about 2 other topics that you've recently hit on. Maybe you can give one nicely wrapped answer for both. So a few days ago, you dropped an article at the 33rdteam.com listing 9 player future bets. Maybe give our audience maybe one hint, maybe one bet, but however generous you want to give them of a tease so that they go check out that article. And you've also recently dropped a beast of an article outlining biggest QB mistakes, done in best ball. Why don't you?
So 9 future, yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, we'll go right into it. 9 futures bets. I'll give 2 in 30 seconds. Deshaun Watson 30-1 to lead the league in passing yards. All he was on a Hall of Fame track before barely playing for 2 years. The last full season he played, he led the NFL in passing yards. Keep that in mind. And he's got a great supporting cast and awesome offensive line in Cleveland. The other one that I think is very interesting, if you believe in Breece Hall's quick recovery, you should bet him 20-1 most rushing yards. Breece Hall is fully healthy. He would go where Jonathan Taylor and Nick Chubb go, 8, 9, 10-1. He goes 20-1 because of health. You know something that the public doesn't know, or you just think he's ahead of schedule, which every fantasy doctor, PT person thinks he is ahead of schedule. He's running full speed already, hitting 20 miles an hour on the Jets GPS. Then Breece Hall is a very intriguing long shot in that market.
Guys, he's Josh Larky at J Larky Tweets. Check him out on Twitter. I mean, the Twitter follow is a no-brainer with the amount of goodness you drop on there. Dan, tell the peeps who we have coming on tomorrow night in the district.
Yeah, so we've got Andrew Cooper coming on tomorrow night. Koopa Fiasco on Twitter, and this is my fellow tight end whisperer. You cannot find somebody who understands the tight end position as well as Andrew Cooper. And he and I every year we like to get together on the GOAT District, and we like to kind of go through the tight ends and figure out who are the guys you really want to be drafting and who are the guys you really don't, because I mean, so much, we were talking before about how, running back, it's kind of a season-by-season proposition. For most tight ends, it's really a season-by-season proposition. You can throw everything that Evan Ingram did out the window because it's a totally different situation with Calvin Ridley in there. So just kind of going through all those different situations, finding those guys who have the potential to go from a late round draft pick to a guy who's really carrying your team at tight end. that's what we're looking for. So we're gonna do our best to put you on the right tight ends for the entire year.
For sure, and whether you're playing tight end preems or not, that's going to help you out, because that's one of those positions where you can definitely get an edge over your league mates. Guys, make sure you subscribe to the GOAT District channel on YouTube, on all your podcasts, your favorite podcast platforms. Follow Dan at Overhyped Sleeper, no E at the end. I'm at JD GOAT District. Josh Larky, we appreciate you, brother, at J Larky Tweets. Guys, we'll check you all later.
Go District, you know the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text. That trash offer's the best. You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man. Y'all know what to do. It's the and I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.